Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of sustainability, the show of agave, tequila, Don Amato, mezcal. But actually, this show is about something far more simple. Today's guest, Jake Lustig, one of the aficionados of spirits and a spokesman and patron saint to agave, mezcal, and tequila, is a pragmatist. Lots of these stories and lots of these journeys that Jake underwent start from a simple, pragmatic approach. Make things work and make a living. And I think we can all agree to see what Jake's empire, so to speak, has become and how he's had his hands in so many great conversations, so many great presentations, and the types of spirits that he's bringing into the States are really, really unparalleled. Wonderful chat with Jake. And as an added bonus, Enrique Fonseca joins us kind of from a distance, but yet chiming in and imbibing his spirit into the room. So I hope you guys enjoy this chat with Jake Lustig.
The way that I think of Ramon Villarreal, who was murdered in 1995 for protesting the CRT law that allows for bottling of mixto tequilas abroad, and his ambition to make sure that all tequila was bottled in Mexico, and only through that mechanism could one ensure the integrity of the product.
Right.
And he was shot at the gates of his distillery.
Jesus.
So I'd say Mexicans
fighting for it
fight
as well.
for the soul of the industry as well.
Are they? Is it as you bring this kind of deck, you bring this keynote to the States to talk about it? It's sustainability is one of the main themes, right, in tequila, or is
sustainability and agave is one of the main things. But I think actually it's modern capital against age-old tradition. So really, what we're seeing is a polarization between efficiency models and historic quality-driven models, and the competition between those.
Man, it's always that kind of that razor's edge of money in art, right? Because once you get tempted,
that's the truth.
You get tempted when there's lots of money in front of you. You're like, well, maybe I can forfeit just a few of my values, just a few. But that's where it starts.
I'm not so sure that it's really Mexican ownership making a conscious decision to forfeit values. I think it's the coercive forces of international capital and the drinks industry.
Is it too attractive? Is it just like it's hard at the distillery sometimes, and that capital looks really attractive? I mean, why succumb to it? This is of course, everything that we say today is subjective, but I'm more of the thinking that this is the incursion of international capital on native industry. Right. Industry, that's a great
Mexico has known how to make incredible spirits for many, many generations, and you have an increasingly multinational conglomerate, spirits-driven business, capital-driven spirits business, and tequila started to really take off, I think, because it is authentic, it is original, it is real. Historically, it's delicious, it's versatile, it's dynamic.
Yeah.
And international spirits trade has looked at what's the next greatest thing. It could be rum, it could be craft gins, it could be whatever. Yeah. And when they're just
looking to invest, aren't they?
That's right. I think it's that. And then Mexico is like many countries trying to emerge out of the third world into first world, has looked at what are enterprises that can fuel development. We certainly can't fault Mexico for
of course
for
not.
realizing that tequila
What's more, it's an amazing currency.
Exactly.
There's spirits made there that you will not taste that have that same character anywhere else, right? You just can't.
Absolutely.
Rum is kind of the same way. It's very much espresso. That's why it's so romantic. We often romanticize about.
Yeah, that's right.
That,
So we we feel that what we observe is that international capitalists have looked at this as being the next opportunity, nothing more.
Right.
We sometimes smirk that it could be potato chips or it could be whatever commodity, Bic lighters, but it happens to be tequila. Mexican tequila. And so you get involved in the tequila industry, then you start looking at where are the vulnerabilities in meeting financial projections, which international boards of directors have to accomplish first.
When you're managing abroad, right? It's like, well, what are the numbers? You're not there. You're not smelling it. You're not getting your hands dirty.
Right.
That is, for any business, for any industry, is a big risk. It's one of the things that denatures the natural creativity and the artistic nature of a lot of industries.
The tendency towards homogenization and then efficiency and then risk management, quote unquote. And before you know it, you've kind of cut off the fringes and you've gone to the heart. And before you know it, you've alienated any type of dynamic, extraordinary practices. And you're all kind of neutered You've neutered it very well.
You fucking neutered it.
Yeah.
Right?
Boy, that's really it. Yeah, I think that's to the heart of the matter.
Yeah. You take the soul out of it.
I think that's exactly to the heart of the matter.
And that's what's interesting is if you look at tech, the companies that are successful in tech are successful because they promulgate a culture, an organic culture, and they let it be what it's going to be, and they don't try to condense it, compress it, or neuter it. But that's the problem with booze, right? Is that people look at it as a commodity. It's like one in, one out. It's $10 cost. It's I sell you two, I make $20. It's so much more than that. You can't reduce a Van Gogh painting to its value on the market. Think about what the motherfucker went through just to paint that. You know what I mean? And so, in a sense, us being kind of removed from our food, removed from our spirits, we don't understand that it's someone's lifeblood. I mean, almost literally.
Wait, I've never drawn a parallel to the tech industry. I've never contemplated that. But as I'm thinking what you've said, yeah, I think it's very much like that. What happens in tech is somebody sees an opportunity. I mean, this is a layman's version of what's going on in tech, but you see an opportunity to develop a program or an app to solve that. And if you can gain enough critical mass, you start, as you said, promulgating that app or that way of approaching the subject, that solution. And then before you know it, you've started to exclude others that might be divergent perspectives.
Sure. It's hard. Success comes with some downfalls. It always does.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But at least success in the tech industry, as much as we want to celebrate it, we talk about kind of vanguard breakaway visionaries that have reformulated, the future, the regurgitate.
Just a bunch of bollocks, really.
Yeah, and what we have in the international spirits game is a consolidation, as all people know, of distribution, routes to market.
Mm-hmm.
Homogenization is the key, and risk management as
make something as inoffensive as possible with the least amount of waste and the least amount of risk that it's not going to work.
And risk.
Yeah.
Risk.
So whiteboard it out, man.
That's it.
Go through all
That's it.
How do you? So
that's what we see massively in tequila. Now, when you talk about mezcal, that's
not there
to
yet.
me.
No one cares
away.
enough yet. There's not enough money in it yet. Once there's enough money, the shark will smell the blood in the water, and thus you get the attention.
I think that's right.
And it's happening. I mean, it's going to happen. But let's focus on the positive for a second, man. So you and Enrique are here. You were in San Antonio yesterday. You were in Austin today, kind of facilitating these seminars. What's the message? What can I sleep on? What can I hope for? That things are going to change? That it's going to be better?
Enrique and I, when we talk about Enrique Fonseca, who's here in the studio with us, we're talking about really a nexus of 4 generations of integrity and agave cultivation. 40 years now in integrity and production, kind of an uncompromising view on how to do things right and what that means subjectively, but actually peculiarly somewhat objectively too, because the other side is so unabashedly rewriting the laws that dictate tequila production to suit their objectives.
To their own financial objectives.
Right? Absolutely. I mean, one of the most glaring things that we've been able to talk about over the last couple of days is 10 years ago, the Tequila Regulatory Council's scratching out of the Norma Oficial Mexicana that governs tequila production, the statement that tequila must be made with mature agave. They implausibly removed that language from the official Norma to make room for people who want to use hydrolysis, sugar extraction of immature agave.
Of any age of agave.
Three-year-old agave with 15% sugars, all of a sudden being qualified
I know that this process is like sulfuric acid. There's a particular
enriched water vapor at 186 degrees in hundreds of micro nozzles that convert starches to sugars,
just
and then
instantaneously, right?
You extract the sugar essence from the agave without any of the vegetal or herbaceous notes of the plant.
That's the heart of it.
Exactly. So it's just straight to efficiency models of production, and it really sidelines any sort of craft, any sort of tradition, any sort of heart or soul.
Disenfranchises. It
absolutely marginalizes. And really, then the conundrum expands, because all of a sudden you've got some of the largest brands in the market realizing we can't go that route. We need authentic, mature agave at really quantifiable sugar levels to make a boutique product. And it can't be easy,
right? Like if everybody is there fishing in the same pond, where's the agave come from? Right?
Well, one could say the agave would come through intelligent management and responsible practices,
but that's long term,
and strict guidelines.
But for the near term, I'm a guy. As is most of the case, I'm a retired dude. I'm a white dude. I want to start a tequila label. Like how do I get the prime agave? Like, is that even a thing, or do I just say, well, I'm going to get what's available and then I'll just take it?
That's right. So we address these concerns daily, and we think that through transparency, education, the types of activities that Enrique Fonseca has done over the last couple of days here in Texas, of first just bringing awareness to the problem, and not everybody's capable of doing that. But when you're one of the leading growers of agave, when you're one of the founding members of the Tequila Regulatory Council, you have a perspective that counts, and that's based in fact and historical realities.
And experience.
And
respect, integrity, right?
But not to be such a downer. I mean, what we see is...
so give me the... let's end on a high note.
So what we see is differentiation. We see increased, especially with this craft cocktail culture, the farm to table culinary movement, increased social responsibility regarding non-GMO crops and conscientious use of fertilizers and all of this type of stuff. What we're seeing is a differentiation in producers and the age-old battle between authenticity and loud messaging. And one of the things we really applaud in Texas, and it's been amazing to see the community in San Antonio and Austin, Houston, of a real, we say the local is beautiful, the small is beautiful, a kind of a grassroots awareness. And it's just astonishing to see how effective that is in the face of global capital and with the benefits of social networking.
It's would you not agree that the organic culture and the way that we're able to let's think about you and I, right? How do we keep in touch?
That's right.
Just until like last week, I got social media, right?
Fantastic.
And do you ever feel out of touch? I feel like what's going on with me. I feel like I know what's going on with you.
It's a great tool,
and it decentralizes big business.
Amen, brother.
It does, right? It totally
Amen.
does. Because you're gonna prevent me from talking to Jake?
Amen. I think we all saw it recently. Bobby Hugel in Houston at Pastry War became aware of chronic kidney disease happening with Nicaraguan cane harvesters.
Sure, only the ones that are in the village and not the ones that left. And if there was a higher percentage of the guys that left that didn't have kidney disease, and you have a skewed statistical
But
sample.
it brought awareness, and
Sure,
it brought an
right.
answer from a family that is...
It did. It like within 48 hours.
the wealthiest family in Central America.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Was brought to a response within, as you say, 48 hours.
Yeah, amazing. And that's to end on that high note, right? That's the opportunity we have, is that
Absolutely.
you can't reduce and you can't stand in the way of the traction of social media, good or bad, right? Like,
Absolutely.
you got a dick pic out there? Sorry, man, it's gonna haunt you for fucking 10 years.
We all get fatigued with the cute puppy videos, but
Right? But when it counts, it resonates.
That's
And
right.
it gains a lot of traction.
That's right. I think in business practices and also absolutely politically, and it's there's a global community. That's one thing we've really come to realize in the spirits industry. We see a real concern for sustainable practices in tequila in Perth and Sydney, Australia, in London, in Shanghai,
Everywhere.
in Singapore, and then of course New York, San Francisco, Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
So that's
The world
exciting.
becomes a lot smaller.
It becomes a lot smaller.
Which is great.
We feel much, probably falsely, but much more empowered. And
Much more
excited.
important.
Right.
Man,
Right.
50 people liked
Right.
my picture of
That's right.
tequila.
That's right. But
that's-
it's no longer 50. It's 200. And,
Sure.
And they're influencers. And
Do you think
Amen.
that we're going to that will change the way that the industry works? Because I have my little hunch that social media and having those tight relationships and being everything but a massive distributor or a massive distillery or a massive company in general, that's where the true future is. It's not
Well,
being,
we'll see.
you know what I mean? Like
see.
small to medium. That's
We'll
my
see.
whole thing. Small SMB.
it becomes existential because
existential.
people's innate desire for membership and
Sure.
community can also be evilly co-opted.
Yeah.
And you can belong. You can,
And then
still
you got
think in your
people
mind you're
pouring
part of
bottles
the-
down the sink.
Well, or
blindly.
also you can think you're part of the kind of the renegade anti-PC culture by
Sure.
celebrating Apple, and then you realize Apple's the largest computer company in the world.
Right,
and
right.
Are their employment practices in backcountry China legitimate? So
That's a good point.
sometimes we can fall victim to our own
A soapbox.
yeah, right. Our own pursuit of what our ideals can sometimes cloud our judgment.
Sure.
It
does
But
happen.
anyway, we're all fighting the good fight.
We are. And that's the fun part. And that's how we met, because
That's right.
brothers in arms.
Yeah,
About
that's right. And that's
distillers.
really the sentiment. It's an international sentiment. And
You
when
can
you
always
see
find a
this-
friend, right? Like, no matter where you are.
it's so exciting to see this kind of nexus of social consciousness, political awareness, and consumer goods. At the end of the day, tequila and mezcal are consumer goods.
Yeah.
And like I say, mezcal is really nascent in dealing with social and economic inequalities. We don't see yet real social responsibility in the mezcal industry. We don't see ecological responsibility. Tequila has had to address already
Absolutely. The
water
audience is
treatment,
wider.
post
You have
distillate
to.
water treatment. You're no longer allowed to distill and then have your water runoff just go into the community creek,
Right.
because the pH is way off and you create a desert wasteland behind your distillery.
Jeez.
Tequila has been made accountable for that, and practices have changed. We don't see that even yet in mezcal.
Soon.
We're all aware that mezcal is got its intriguing flavor by burning firewood.
Right,
an average
right.
of about 3.5 pounds of firewood per liter.
Is that
But
right? Jeez.
yeah, it's amazing. But astonishingly absent from any discourse on mezcal is reforestation.
Yeah.
So
Just
we've got-
the pure fuel to keep.
It seems so
Yeah.
obvious.
Sure, it does.
But what you mentioned in the beginning about sympathetic, as you put it, white guys
Yeah.
and getting involved in maybe private labels and stuff like that, that's gone rampant in tequila. but it's actually run I think some days it's cycle.
Yeah.
And it's coming back now to either Mexican owned or international capital, less of the idealistic, dreamy, American gringo who's deciding to get into the tequila business.
I think I'm the only gringo in the room, actually.
But that's pushing. No, there's two of us here.
Okay, good. You speak such nice Spanish. I feel like I'm a man at odds.
Oh, that's to a gringo's ear. Mexican will point out where I fall short.
Where you falter.
But it's wild. It's changing. It's energized because it's big capital. There's
where there's monies, there's problems, right?
And opportunity.
That's right.
I mean, and I don't only mean opportunity to make money, but opportunity for economic sustainability by the people who are actually harvesting, growing agave.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, not to be a downer, one of the points that Enrique Fonseca has made over the last few days is in the recent decade and a half, we've seen an attrition from 15,000 agave cultivators down to 2,000.
Really?
So how many families have been pushed to the margins in just agave growing practices?
Wow. That's an amazing...
It's an astonishing fact, right? We've seen in the last 10 years a 2% drop in average sugar levels.
Oh, geez.
Because there's been increased efficiencies on how to extract sugars from lesser mature agave. Yeah. And a 10% drop.
And that'll trend down and continue to trend down, right?
And what does that mean to families that used to wait for a legitimate crop and get a legitimate price for that agave?
Right.
So
it's a big problem.
It's a tug and pull. It's an enduring effort of the conscientious bartender and also now consumer community to vote with their dollar and make sure that they're supporting the right people. So it's both exciting and terrifying.
Sure. But that's what life is, right?
And particularly, I think, in our generation.
Yeah.
When we see both the challenges ahead of us, but also, like you say, the increased communitarian approach to addressing these problems, these conundrums, and figuring out more in a community sentiment, a responsible answer to them. So that's empowering and exciting.
It's a good era. So something that I don't. So we, like I said, we met kind of talked about spirits in a completely different way. But are you a California guy? Is that where you grew up?
I am. Yeah.
Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Born in San Francisco.
San Francisco. Yeah. My mom grew up in San Francisco, man.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What neighborhood?
She was in Haight, I think.
Oh, far out.
Yeah, totally far out.
Yeah, far out.
During that whole thing, the one thing that she tells me, and I still try to seek some validity, but she's like, "Yeah, I saw the first Grateful Dead show."
All right.
I believe that.
Wow.
I believe that. Although she
rest in peace, Jerry.
I know, man.
No, I'm a Bay Area kid. I was raised in Berkeley and Oakland.
Yeah.
My mom remarried and moved to southern Mexico.
Did she really?
Yeah.
How old were you when she remarried?
Oh God, I don't even know.
Just young, like.
My mother was in the food and restaurant business, bar business, and as any listeners can attest, who were raised with a parent in the hospitality industry, you don't see them often. My father, actually, rest in peace, was the one who reared me. But my mom's life path exposed me a lot to Mexico growing up.
Yeah.
I was back and forth.
Did she come back a lot, like after she...
She did. She was back and forth my entire life. And so I spent a lot of time with her. My dad primarily raised me, but all of those summers, all of those, winter breaks and spring breaks and weekends. And there was a time that I thought a lanyard was physically attached to my neck for the unaccompanied minor on the airplane. I knew actually the pilot said Mexicana de Aviación.
Like, oh, hey, it's little Jakey back there.
Yeah. So it was like a little community in the front of the airplane.
Where in Mexico was she?
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca, no shit.
Yeah, many years before anybody cared much about mezcal.
Cool, right?
Yeah, long before it was cool.
Was this the 70s, 80s? 80s.
80s.
Yeah.
80s, yeah.
And so she's doing the restaurant thing. What'd your father do?
He was a professor.
No shit.
Yeah.
At Berkeley?
He was a professor at Berkeley and then at other UC campuses and then at some other universities.
What program?
we always joked I was the son of a migrant professor, like a migrant farm worker. He was a political rebel rouser.
No kidding.
Yeah, his subject of choice was the lighthearted subject of 19th century German political philosophy.
Yeah, that's real lighthearted.
So yeah, Nietzsche, Kant, Hegel, those fun lightweight conversations.
Right. Well, no, is Kafka later, even though he wasn't.
Yeah, Kafka wasn't part of the family discourse so much, but
he was
Nietzsche,
a little bit too light.
Yeah, a little bit too light. Right. Yeah. Right. Dreamy Kafka.
Yeah.
Bartleby the Scrivener. But no, absolutely, it was a heavy tone, and
that's pretty.
My dad was a serious guy.
Did he? Do you ever feel like he at least let loose now and again?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah, he had a fantastic humor. Boy, do I miss it. He had a fantastic humor,
sense of humor.
Yeah, I don't know how to say this. Kind of, he used to tell me, "Don't worry, lad. It gets darkest before it goes completely black."
That's
so he was. He had a great humor.
Yeah.
But I would say kind of a fatalist.
Yeah.
But
where was he from? You said lad, so I'm just thinking maybe.
No, he was a border child. He was from Chula Vista, California.
Yeah.
Right there on the border where you can look over the fence and see south into Mexico.
Interesting.
But his spirit was always with the people. Yeah. When I was a young kid, he'd go and try to help the Cubans reach their sugar tonnage harvest. There were these brigadas, as they call them, to go contribute to the sugarcane harvest, and they would rally American students and intellectuals to go cut cane and contribute what they could.
That's amazing.
So I am very grateful to have been raised in a household that was aware of social causes and political plights, and with particular emphasis on Latin America, just because that's our hemisphere.
Any brothers or sisters?
Not from both my parents.
Yeah.
No.
So a half.
Stepchildren, step siblings. But it was oftentimes he and I, traveling around, and we were an anomaly, to say the least. We had an old Chevy pickup, and I took a lot of pride in how I could tie a good knot when we move our entire belongings from one town to another. He used to say, you know how to tell a rich Okie from a poor Okie is the rich Okie's got 2 mattresses on top. There was a time in my life I actually believed that. So
no, everybody's throwing away mattresses all the time now.
Yeah, well, boy, we could go all night on how the eras have changed.
Yes, but absolutely.
No, I was raised pragmatically, and I think in looking back, I was raised with an interesting mix of social awareness, but also kind of a foot in the university, and real respect for both working class culture and celebrating the struggles of the working class, while also not taking for granted that we were comfortably middle class, and could afford a better life.
Having your father being in higher education, did you feel like you were destined to follow in those footsteps and do teaching, or? Yeah,
to some degree, but I also developed a healthy skepticism for institutions.
Sure, which you do. You kind of you both embrace and reject your parents, right? That's how it is.
Well, no, yes, that's inevitably true. But also, I realize I always felt that, as all people probably do, we revere our parents, and I felt that if my father, who was so well received by his community and so well published and so applauded by his students, was forever chasing work from one university to the other, that institutions couldn't be trusted.
Because someone should have locked it down for him.
That's
if he's that great.
That's what I felt. Yeah.
I'm
So a kid of the 70s. So we were raised without a lot of supervision.
Sure.
And kind of make our own way. For one reason or another, I left home early. I left home at 16 and began making my way in the world. And
is that what you wanted though at 16? Was that
we had a very independent spirit.
Yeah.
And that's also part of the culture, I think, of the Bay Area, California, historically, entrepreneurialism, ability to remake oneself, kind of
to prove you can.
To prove you can. Yeah, right. To prove that you're not part of anybody else's marching band.
Sure.
I think to our detriment long term.
Maybe so.
What we may lack is some teamwork.
What did you get into? That's a great, to touch on that real quick. That's great. The teamwork. That it is community, but sometimes you just don't feel like it. You feel like it's me versus the world, right? It's like, I got to prove myself. Right. I've got to have my own persona. I've got to do it all on my own. Which it's not like that. It's not really ever.
Doesn't need to be.
It doesn't have to be. And you aren't respected any less to have to rely on people you care about to help you through.
Absolutely.
Right. You're not. Just because you're vulnerable.
I think such an individualistic tendency is a detriment, not to be so applauded. But
that's how it is when we're younger. 16, I can't imagine. I wouldn't even a fraction of what my parents were able to offer in terms of ethics, the way that they raised me to be responsible. I couldn't even acknowledge that then. There's no way, right? It's like me. No, I know. I'm 16, fucking right, I know, right? But you don't know anything when you're 16.
That's true. But I've also noticed, but in addition, I've noticed over the years that there is a cultural peculiarity of people who are raised between countries.
I can't attest to that.
When you've got one foot in Mexico and one foot in the United States, you cannot be contained. If a normal teenager...
It's a scientific theorem, I think,
that's
Jake.
Right, I think so.
Cannot be created nor destroyed.
Yeah, if you add already to the hubris of your average teenager that I'm now binational, bilingual, and, there's no limits. I'm unbound here.
It's like PCP, being on PCP the whole time. Delusions of grandeur are just reality, right?
That's right. That's right. But if you live in delusions of grandeur long enough, you start to believe that they're reality. And if you continue to believe that's reality long enough, maybe you can just create that reality around you.
That's right. Maybe that's a possibility. I'd love to think that it is, that you could color hubris and that would be the reality. But so what were you doing then when you move out, you're 16, what industry? Were you still going to school? Did you drop out?
No, I never actually dropped out. I found an alternative high school in way northern California.
Whereabout?
In a teeny little town of 50 families called Petrolia, California.
Interesting, okay.
That had grown tired of sending its children 2 hours away to the nearest public school, so it cobbled together a little one-room schoolhouse.
Really?
So I went from a Berkeley high school with 3,700 students to a schoolhouse of 15.
Jesus.
And
where were you staying?
We made a deal with the landowner on which that school sat to build a cabin for him in exchange for a place to live. And when I say we, that was with a lifelong dear friend of mine who I grew up with, I'm still very close with, Alejandro Morales, which actually tied in with my whole Mexican experience, because he's a Mexican American raised in Berkeley, and when I left, his family initially took me in.
No kidding.
So he was a kind of a guiding force, as scary as that is to say about him. If anyone out there knows him,
don't give him any credit, Jake. I swear to God, you give him any.
So we went up to this school. We kind of remade ourselves. He and I. It was an incredible experience. That's actually what enabled me to graduate high school, and then I went to UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, no kidding.
Which had a great program.
What were you studying?
Latin American studies with an emphasis on politics and history.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So
German?
That fit right in. Yeah, a little lighter than 19th century German political philosophy, but
not much. Just a touch.
A little more novelty in Mexico's history. But I was fascinated with the adventurer tales of Bernal Diaz, who wrote down every observation while accompanying Hernan Cortez from Veracruz up to the Aztec Empire to establish the Spanish state in Mexico. Wow. So all of that kind of matriculated into a fascination with Mexican history, and that dovetailed with this other part of my early life, intrigued with Mexican culture.
Would you say that... Doesn't sound like you were conflicted about it, because you
no,
in a sense,
conflicted.
Right? It's like two tempos of life.
To be conflicted would have taken more maturity and intelligence.
You did. You just subverted
young,
it, right?
dumb, and full of something. How does that saying go? So, yeah.
So
no, but it was fun, and I began in Oaxaca to really be intrigued by a historical perspective.
Right.
You know, I don't know how to say this, but kind of a cultural legitimacy. Things in Northern California and my upbringing seem so cobbled together and uncontemplated, and with so many dire consequences to family and people. And
were you self-destructive?
I actually wasn't. Luckily,
that's good. That's good. I imagine the Tasmanian devil. You just have
no. I actually always had a healthy sense of self-preservation.
Very thoughtful,
but that didn't keep me from a lifelong tendency to put myself in dangerous situations, and it was always the risque and the barely, contemplatable that was intriguing to me.
Yeah. But you did finish up at UC Santa Cruz?
I did.
And then is that when you hit Oaxaca at that point?
No, actually I had already years prior.
Oh, okay.
But that turned out to be the ideal school for me because they had such an extensive independent study and field study program and study abroad program.
Right.
So it was hilarious. I would FedEx my papers back to professors and then bring back bottles of mezcal and drink with them. And
what year are we talking?
Instead of being reprimanded, be applauded and then head out in the next flight. So
is this the 90s?
That's right. Yeah.
So this is before it was cool.
Way before it was cool. Way before
papers have never been cool, frankly, and FedEx has hardly ever been cool. But mezcal is now kind of cool, but it wasn't then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, so
you've been well entrenched in that culture and those spirits.
Yeah, I was. It was very familiar to me, and yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I never did anything in this business to be cool. It was all very subsistence based. Mm-hmm. My first wife became pregnant with our first child in 94. He was born in 95. So by 94, I had to get real serious real quick.
What stops being about you, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's got to be a huge shift.
Right. That's right. Actually, and also, I mean, just very pragmatically, I mean, I don't know how personal to get on this type of interview, but there were family backgrounds that I made sure I didn't want to be raising my children behind bars. And some of the circles that I was traveling in, had I stayed young and exuberant and irresponsible, probably wouldn't have worked out quite well.
But you went a more erudite and more intellectual approach to it, it seems like. Because you didn't have, maybe it was a vehicle to travel and be immersed in culture going to UC Santa Cruz.
I know it was, looking back, it was just remarkably pragmatic. It was how to make $1 out of 15 cents, as they say. Okay. I would go out to distilleries and buy mezcal in 50-liter jugs and break it down to 10 5-liter jugs.
You've been hustling
and sell it in the
a long ass time, haven't you?
Back then, Mexico had a heavyweight 20 peso coin that reverberated on anyone's metallic, garage door in Oaxaca. So I would bang, 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 and the classic retort is, ¿Quién eres? ¿Quién es? I say, El güero de mezcal. I was known as the güero de mezcal, the white guy in mezcal. And you'd hear the gordo te habla.
Gordo.
¿Quién es? El güero de mezcal. Encárgale 5 litros. Have him bring me 5 litros, 5 liters.
Yeah.
Una medida, as we call it in Oaxaca. So, boy, this was so many years before it was cool to be in mezcal.
Yeah.
I was a peddler of mezcal in my mom's neighborhood.
But you still enjoyed it. Like, what appealed to you then besides the financial?
Oh, it sounds so grotesque to say it, but it was the financial.
No shit.
Oh, yeah. It was sitting at the edge of my bed,
counting,
looking at the pesos in my hand and saying, this is viable. I think I'll be able to feed my future kid with this.
I'll run a corporation someday.
Yeah, right.
How long were you peddling mezcal?
Yeah, no, I didn't come to this from any bartending or sommelier background or interest in
business. But it's even better because you work when you understand the costs for things. You do appreciate them more. You really do. And if you're
I'm a firm believer.
You do.
If you don't have any pain or any suffering, you may be untested.
That's right. What do you know? Like if you don't struggle or you don't go a little broke now and again.
What is the old adage? Necessity is the mother of invention.
That's exactly right. You're backed into a corner. What do you do?
But I could not have been luckier. I mean, what was going on in Mexico at that time was that tequila was just beginning to be challenged with modern models of efficiency and foreign capital, and tequileros were just beginning, or maybe they had already been, but as far as my awareness was, they were just beginning to be confronted with where is this going and what are relics of the past. And it was in fact Jalisco tequileros that were in Mexico most interested in mezcal.
Really? In
Mexico City and Puebla and other places, you couldn't find a taker, but you could in Jalisco with tequileros, who would remark to me, oh, well, this is the way my grandfather made tequila. And that's not something I fully internalized till recently when the director of the Mezcal Regulatory Council, Hipócrates Nolasco, sent us the 1948 norma for establishing tequila. And what we read there is remarkably parallel to what we have in mezcal today.
No kidding.
It's extraordinary to look at
first draft almost, right?
The first norma, and it's just extraordinary to see that you weren't allowed to adjust proof.
Right.
You were to ferment with your fiber, agave fiber, all of these things that we do in mezcal today in Oaxaca. And I say, wow, it's really true what these guys were telling me in the 90s, that this is the way their grandfathers made.
You've got proof.
Tequila.
Got a document.
Here's the proof.
Yeah.
And that's in the Diario Federal de la República. So that's the official publication from the from the federal government.
Wow.
So that was empowering, but that also just completely unintentionally opened doors for me in Jalisco. And I, again, better lucky than smart. I had the dumb luck to find somebody. Actually, that was through a San Francisco connection, an old philanthropic, old 160-year-old San Francisco company called Haas Brothers, founded in 1851. Old Bavarian Jews from Germany who came along with Levi Strauss.
No shit, same time.
Exactly. And in fact, the Haas's began selling Levi Strauss jeans to the mining camps ran Levi Strauss for the next 150 years.
Holy
shit, Bob
that's
Haas
crazy.
stepped down, like 8 years ago.
How'd you get connected with them?
You
sold him some mezcal, didn't you?
No, it was, I found one of their, one of the descendants of that family is in the spirits game. And at some point I had hit as many stores and restaurants as I could sell out of my trunk. And somebody introduced to me the novel idea of selling through a distributor, and I had never contemplated that idea. And
did it become like something that at that moment you're like, maybe this could be a thing? Like not just me.
No, I'm not even sure I was convinced of that yet. Again, it was very pragmatic. I was always just kind of, what's the next step?
Well, so then this brings up interesting questions. So you're traveling a lot. You have your son was pretty young at that point,
right?
Like, how often were you out of town?
All the time. It's remarkable to when I look back how absent I was in the beginning. But again, not to say it 50,000 times in this conversation, but it was pragmatism and subsistence and.
Sure.
So what I did, I had this, bilingual skills, and I had this quote unquote producer's perspective on some of the conundrums involved with agave spirits. And I found some similar souls, some like-minded people who at least understood me or tolerated me in Jalisco.
Tolerating is probably the
operative word there. And I launched the tequila.
Which tequila?
Espolón. Espolón tequila.
Wait. You launched Espolón?
right when they were finishing the construction of the distillery, I picked up the rights to Espolón.
Really?
We created the first bottles, the design. I began importing that along with my mezcal into California.
Which mezcal was it at that time?
Still the one that I worked 22 years later, Don Amado.
And that's what we're sipping in it.
That's what we're drinking here.
Here's a good segue.
Speaking of which,
this is a
salud.
brilliant salud. Enrique, Jake, salud.
Thank you, Mike.
This is an espadín though, yeah?
This is an espadín.
This is copper clay?
This is clay pot.
Oh, no.
In mezcal, I became obsessed with clay pot distillation, the kind of cultural anthropology of distilling in clay was romantic and remarkable to me. And in my experience, ultimately, one of the ways that I convinced the University of California at Santa Cruz to give me a diploma was by
bottles
doing
of
this.
mezcal.
Well, partially bottles of mezcal, and then this study of 60 odd producers and points of differentiation. And so very unwittingly, I did that to graduate college. Right? Again,
That's what you did.
Again, this what I want to say motif of better lucky than smart.
Sure.
I did this study because it was regional.
Ultimately, like what you could call a dissertation or a thesis.
Yeah, an undergraduate thesis.
So you published, for the sake of academia anyway, you
no, it was an undergraduate thesis. But
sure. But you have it, right?
Yeah, and one of the peculiar coincidences or strokes of luck was one of the resources that I found in Oaxaca was a professor, a notable professor of a lot of repute in southern Mexico,
Really?
Alberto Sanchez Lopez, who was a director at the time in southern Mexico of the Mexican National Council of Science and Technology, which was the
It sounds impressive already.
He was an impressive guy. He is an impressive guy, not to speak of him in the past. He's a remarkable composer of songs, an author, a professor.
Renaissance man.
A Renaissance man, just a very dynamic leader of community and legions of students following him. Really a guy who's given his life and his soul to the community, to the heart of Oaxaca. And he was impressed at my tenacity to roam the backcountry of Oaxaca and collect this data. So they ended up using that in the Mexican National... It's called CONACYT.
Really?
El Consejo Nacional de Ciencia y Tecnología.
Did you think that at such a young age or such a lucky age, as you say, that you would be putting out something that...
No, I was just one of many. I mean, I was one of many other students and proteges of Alberto Sanchez Lopez.
Are you an amazingly humble guy?
No, it's not worth anything more than that, frankly. I mean, when I look back on it, I'm
at that point
shamed by my writing and the details that I forgot or didn't think to ask.
But it's still like a monumental thing.
I don't know.
Maybe not in
but whatever it was, it gave me exposure to...
I love it. I've been dealing with Kanye for the past fucking 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the fact you're so
I need
humble.
to love myself. Yeah. All right.
I can't get him to take credit for anything. Nothing.
My friends are critiquing my current interest in Kanye, but his last record wasn't so bad.
Don't have a dog in that race. All I gotta say is that I don't. Comment. No comment. Jake.
Anyway.
But so this particular
I'll
brand,
listen to Kanye or Ramon Ayala and
see,
whatever comes up first.
It's different. I'm listening to all these Brit guys, these fucking Brit guys. But so you said Don Amada, is that right? Amada?
Don Amado, yeah. Amado Cisneros was rest in peace. He was an old producer, actually a poet, a composer himself.
No kidding.
From the very back country.
In Oaxaca, though?
In Oaxaca, a town called San Juan Hayacatlan in the region of La Canada, which is to the north east of Oaxaca City. And he endured me patiently, pestering him for 3 years.
You just asked him question after question.
After question. And unfortunately, once he became old and frail, his descendants didn't have the same convictions about proper mezcal production. They didn't have quite the same concepts of integrity and not shortcutting. Quality, but the other family that I was absolutely in love with, always have been, is the Arreanes family in Santa Catarina, Minas, which is about 50 minutes to the southeast of Oaxaca City. And I always, I guess through this practice of learning all of these different distilleries, became a little bit prejudiced about those mezcalerias that lie along the Pan American Highway that were more efficiency oriented and a little less quaint, and those that were in the Valley of Miahuatlan and Ejutla and Sole de Vega. Judah Kepner makes an incredible mezcal vago.
Yes.
And Sole de Vega, I'm a big fan.
One of my favorites.
Hands down. And we are in that town, Santa Catarina, Minas.
Kidding.
So I had an opportunity to renovate an old distillery there, a 300-year-old operation with that family.
How big was the property? What do you like? Just big fields, or was
fields? 2 blocks in the middle of town in Santa Catarina, Minas. And Germán Bonifacio Arreanes Brobles and I formed a 50-50 partnership. And in order to renovate that distillery, I brought in another old friend of mine, a gentleman named Jose Espinosa Moreno. And we went to task in 92 and then finished that renovation in 94. Began up distilling for ourselves in 95, got all of our permits. And
was the goal to eventually bring it in to San Francisco?
Yeah, that's right. And I was selling our little mezcal in California.
Yeah.
And I brought in then Espolón. That was a distillery that was founded in 98.
Wow.
And so
you're talking 95 with
right, the Don Amado predated the Espolón. And so all of a sudden I found myself with my own little
piece
boutique podunk mezcal and this unheard of tequila.
Yeah.
And I began selling that in the streets of California when I became impressed with in a state of, at that point, 38 million inhabitants, 50% Latinos, how the large distributors bafflingly were not only unaware of mezcal, they were unaware of really tequila beyond Patron and maybe Herradura.
Really?
They were completely
just not interested. It was
totally uninterested. To them, the 50% of California that's Latino was somehow irrelevant. I was offended by that.
Preposterous.
It's preposterous.
You would think if their whole paradigm and their whole perspective is let's make some money, 50%? Give me a fucking break, right? Like,
well, I found that vulnerability, and so again in pragmatism, I convinced them that they ought to hire me to change the dynamic. And I created
You've been in politics, Jake. You ever?
Wow. I don't think I would be a good
I think
one
you'd be
for
better
politics.
than you think you would.
Maybe so. I don't think so. It's not in the plans. But anyway, before I knew it, I'm stumbling around California running the Hispanic or Latin market division for this big distributor.
Wow. The distributor's still around?
Yeah, the distributor's still around.
It's a big one.
You're catching my laughter. They are the largest in the world, and they just consolidated
with Bacardi, if I recall, right?
They just picked up Bacardi, and
I know. I think I've heard of those guys.
Yeah, little family.
I think
company.
They care about
actually
the
they
Latino
are a family company.
Are they?
Yeah, Southern Wine and Spirits.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Owned by the Chaplins.
Yeah,
and a magnanimous, dynamic, incredible man at the helm, Harvey Chaplin.
That's good, at least.
Old Brooklyn Jew, very innovative, very strategic, heart of gold, incredible. He's developed this empire really through hard work and personality, and it's grown beyond his wildest dreams. I mean, things begin to take on a life of their own,
as they do.
But now Southern Wine and Spirits is just merged with Glazers. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, I did that for 11 or so years, and then
and so you were running that division, basically.
I was running that division.
Did you still? And so you had still an actual. You said you're 50% partners in Don Amato, right?
That's right.
And then Epsilon.
And the distillery, not really just Don Amato, the distillery that makes Don Amato.
Yeah, so whatever
we make another
labels
well.
came out.
Right.
What is the other one in the States as well?
Mina Real, because
that's you guys as well.
Well, not to be confused with another brand called Real Minero.
No, Mina, it's a different label.
Mina Real is ours. Our distillery for 300 years has been the Real de Minas distillery. That's the editorial, I never trademarked the name. I never thought to trademark the name. But colloquially in Oaxaca, our mezcal was always sold as Real Minero. The real mezcal from Minas. Yeah. I never trademarked it, and another family trademarked it. They happen to be cousins of ours, so I won't go in further.
It wasn't
into
like
that,
acrimonious, was it?
Tenuously.
See, okay, that's fair. So, but you got two labels.
Yeah,
you're a part owner in the distillery. You've got Epsilon. Which did you have equity in Epsilon?
Epsilon, well? No equity. That just kind of gave me street cred, I guess we could say, in the industry.
Sure.
And again, I was an anomaly, so I think this isn't all my own doing. I mean, I'm a white guy. I'm a Jewish background from the Bay Area. So
your father?
Right.
Okay.
And so I was comfortable for executives to work with.
Sure.
And
are you Jewish? Yeah. Phew, now we can air out all the dirty laundry.
Yeah.
Is that why you were saying that we're both white guys? Because you speak Spanish like.
There's a lot of misnomers. Mexico City has a Jewish population of around 70,000 people.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So it's a big population.
Yeah.
So you get in. So why'd you leave? Why'd you leave the Kush gig?
I just really, I was the kid, the son of communists in Berkeley. It was years of my young life. I didn't know you're not supposed to wear a skirt and couldn't, walk around with snot hanging down your face, and who cared? I just wasn't. I never got in this to make money.
Yeah,
it wasn't the point. Right. I didn't know what to do if I knocked off at 3 p.m. to go play golf.
Right.
And I won a nice little victory with the Tequila Regulatory Council to be able to do a program that I had dreamt of for years, and that was there's a rule in the Tequila Regulatory Council, presumably to protect the consumer, to prevent some distillery from making a product for export and for tourist centers and then using another maybe substandard distillery for national production. Mm-hmm. So there's a rule that ensures all production under any particular brand come from one distillery. Mm. And I started to feel that was in fact promoting mediocrity, because when we look at the nuanced terroir-driven characteristics of different tequilas, we see that lowland agave might be very low in brick sugars. It's quite dry, quite hot.
Yeah, minerally,
yeah. And is gorgeous when barreled, and you get a little bit of that contribution of caramel vanilla butterscotch from oak. Mm-hmm. Really delightful. But to release lowland blancos at those historic 22% brick sugars were just throat-scaldingly hot, while conversely in Los Altos de Jalisco, where you have higher brick sugars, more robust, citrusy, fatter, fuller agave flavors. Those are gorgeous as blancos, but kind of abominations when you're barrel aging them and laying oak on that. So I made this argument with the Tequila Regulatory Council that this policy was in fact reinforcing mediocrity.
Is that how you phrased it?
That's how I phrased it and didn't win.
Oh shit! What'd they say to you?
No.
Jog on.
Finally, interestingly, what won the argument was to make a familial argument that these different distilleries are like a family. And would you reject one offspring to favor another? Don't we need to bring everybody together?
That's a good argument.
Doesn't a family need to move forward harmoniously.
Yeah.
Anyway, the long and the short of it was I won the right to do this project, which
What'd you call the project?
I didn't know what to call it because I really didn't want to do branded. I was fatigued on brands at the time.
Sure.
So I wanted to do a project that really celebrated producers and didn't talk about brands.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do an unbranded tequila, which is very unrealistic. How do you list that in a distributor's catalog?
The brand becomes unbranded.
So I thought the most impartial way to talk about a distillery would be to refer to it just strictly by its legal alcohol license number, which is a 4-digit number in Spanish. It's called a NOM.
A NOM, yeah.
Meaning the registry number that the Tequila Regulatory Council assigns to a distillery when it's authorized to produce tequila under the Norma Oficial Mexicana. So the number is called a NOM number. So I began this project where I could approach out of about 60 distilleries that I knew, maybe 50 distilleries I knew, those that were most extraordinary in their particular expression. Might be a Blanco here, a Reposado there, an Añejo somewhere else, and make an art out of understanding those noms. This is where we go way out on the tree limb here, but
I like trees. It's fun.
So I called it Arte Nom.
Arte Nom.
And then it's Arte Nom Selección, a selection from so and so.
So it's basically you saying, I'm hand picking it.
I unabashedly. This is my subjective opinion of.
You're like a Van Winkle. You realize that, right? You'll never take credit
more like Rip Van Winkle. But anyway, the long and the short of that story was that I look at Enrique as a fantastic example of how that program succeeded. Distillers, who I will say, in my subjective opinion, genius, extraordinary distillers, realized they could do a one-off kind of best of the best for this.
Sure.
And really get eccentric and really
do what they want, have some creative liberties.
Creative liberties. I mean, the Reposado, the family decided to forego commercial yeast in favor of doing something that they long since given up on, which was scraping the pencas of the agave to extract wild field yeast dumped on those plants by trees that they had planted around the fields.
Right.
So you really got distillers saying, boy, even my national brand, I can't really beat my chest and call it myself and talk too much about what I do because this national market might not be receptive to it. Foreign market. It's
almost like a breath of relief for them, right? Because it's like, okay, now I have a
and I
little
hadn't
bit of
anticipated that, but it became
That's amazing.
It was really fun. So with the Tequila Regulatory Council's acceptance of that program, in a completely separate channel, the Mexican Secretary of Rural Development and Agriculture, Forestation, and la Carpa Secretaria de Agricultura, Pesca, Agricultura, they gave us a grant to redevelop our Oaxacan distillery on a premise that we would employ X amount of rural workers to create economy in southern Mexico.
That's amazing, yeah.
And I got that grant, which was an extraordinary amount of money to build really the sustainable distillery of my dreams.
That's amazing. What, quarter of a mil? Something like that?
No, significantly more than that.
Jesus, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really neat. I mean, that was a big program that I brought to them.
But how do you feel about being the guy that's from the States, basically, right? Even though you've got some obviously some ties to Mexico, but being the guy from the States that is tasked with improving the economy. Because if you put it simply, that's what you're doing.
Oh, it's a blessing.
You really took that to heart and took
what a
pride
blessing.
in that, right?
What a blessing. Yeah. I mean, the opportunity to improve the economy, the well-being of people you love.
Yeah.
I mean, what an extraordinary opportunity.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the pieces I remember us first talking about.
Yeah, no, a phenomenal opportunity.
Rebuilding that.
I mean, I was in Oaxaca a month ago, and we're having a typical meeting the way that I have them with their personnel.
No, yeah, I've seen you smash your hands on the table
in a circle. Like... Yeah, I don't like chairs. People sit down, they talk too long.
That's
so
right.
We've all got to stand.
Everybody's doing wall squats.
And we were all in tears within a few minutes that 20 families are now living off of this. And 20 families is really significant.
That's a lot, man.
It's really a lot. I mean, it's hard work to create subsistence for 20. And my props to restaurateurs and bartenders who do it all day long.
But you did it. Do you at least take some pride in the fact that you did this? Now, maybe not alone.
No, I really don't, because as anyone with any sense of maturity knows, it's absolutely not me. I mean, it's all teams. It's all teamwork. It's a collective effort.
Right. But you don't ever... So the thing is, at some point, your pedigree and your resume speaks for you, right? So giving jobs to people, creating brands, creating a lot of traction in the market for mezcal, for tequila, all of it. At some point, you have to say, like...
From your lips to God's ears. We'll see. We'll see.
You don't have a PR person, do you? Because no one's speaking the graces of you, because you're just like, no.
It's not necessary. I mean, really, one is humbled when one works collectively with lots of others.
The pride, the treasure is in the work itself. Like, that's how it is for me, right? Like that. We don't have to talk about it. Got done. That's what makes me proud.
And I'm not even sure that my conviction is necessarily the right way to go. I mean, one of the things that's really endeared me now, he's endeared to me. I don't know quite how to say that. I'm very impressed with the director of the Mezcal Regulatory Council, Hipócrates Nolasco, who's been making repeatedly the point, as we say in Spanish, mezcal es un medio. Mm-hmm. It's a means towards an end. Mezcal, tequila, in and of themselves, I don't think that they are the end. I don't think that they are the objective. Economy, improved living,
right?
The reduction of economic scarcity that would drive families to split, that would drive young men to risk their lives crossing the deserts. Economic exploitation. I guess in some ways I hope to be my father's son. That really
fight for it. Fight for
these are tools that we have to improve lives, improve economies, and if done responsibly, we can improve lives and economies without damaging the ecology and tradition. And I think that's our big objective. Mm. The market is fickle. The trends of consumers come and go. And so I don't want to say we're here to introduce the world to exotic species of wild agave, or we're here to show the world the extraordinary refinement of extended age tequilas. I mean, they're all pieces of a larger puzzle. On how to protect the family and values and subsistence.
Sure.
I think that's really what it's all about. And that's not quite a romantic message, because Why not? Well, there's a tendency to say that there's a tendency to say that the vehicle itself is the destination.
Yeah, but maybe that's not the case. There's so many other ramifications to a bottle here. It's not the same with gin. It's not the same with bourbon, right? We don't see this. We're very insulated. We don't understand the economic and the communal effects of the spirits we drink, because there's not a lot, right? Gin, fucking gin, man. Gin's, you make it 5 days, okay? It's fine, right? It's some neutral. You think about anything coming from the earth like that. Now, France may be one of the only other areas in which I say it's kind of maybe a similar thing, right? Families, generations.
Absolutely. It's very inspirational. The story of how the big cognac houses respectfully work with the eau de vie producers.
Absolutely.
We say in Spanish, when something gives you such a tickle that you have chills in your spine in a positive way, we say me da cosquilla.
How do you say boner in Spanish? Sorry, it's another way to express the same.
I don't know.
A little bit less articulate.
It's not quite as erotic, but it's It's sensational to look. It was very inspirational, sensational to see the respect that the big cognac houses have, Courvoisier, Martel, Remy, Hennessy, have in really recognizing their livelihood is dependent on 1,500, 4,500, 6,000 eau de vie families. Right. And the respectful interaction. Now, I'm not in the middle of that, so maybe it's not so respectful. But it's
a huge parallel. One of the few.
We hope it could be a huge parallel. Yeah. And, I think that the Mexican sentiment is communitarian and family. Yeah. And really actually devoted to quality and substance of character. And I think that can be really reflected in contemplated and well-intentioned spirits, because the world is enamored with agave. And agave spirits is really, we look at sometimes it's like a Old Testament manna. Agave grows in the worst conditions. Right. You can go to the most godforsaken hillside, sun-beaten and wind-swept, and there's an agave that's going to grow, that's going to produce an income for that family. Yeah. So it's magical. It's mysterious. It's so dynamic. What a blessing in this life to have found this industry and found the partners that I have.
And I mean, I feel that the same way, like being the other side of it, being able to, Enrique, like, he's sitting here kind of
fantastic.
Listening to it. It's an amazing
experience. I gotta say here, I feel quite foolish saying all this with Enrique Fonseca to my left.
He's like your handler. He's the guy, like, he's gonna wag his finger at you, like, no.
Hombre, me va a regañar
no. Well, so tell me about what you're doing in the capacity in which I met you, which is Haas Brothers, right?
Haas Brothers is a, like I said, 160-year-old California company, 17th company in California history.
Wow.
Over the years, ran Levi Strauss for 150 years.
Which
helped start Wells Fargo Bank.
That's amazing.
His own professional sports teams. But a dynamically philanthropic, socially conscious, activist family.
Yeah.
Really remarkable pedigree. Simultaneously absolutely powerful in California's history, but also quite humble, and also quite guided by mentality of service and contribution.
So why'd you feel the need to join? It seems like you guys have similar ethics.
I've been asked that a lot, but really, as we'd say in Spanish, simpático souls. They're
complementary.
Yeah. And I've never intended to do things myself.
Why not? You seem very capable.
I'm not sure that that's our purpose. I mean, I think I am capable. I hope that I am, but I think working collectively, collaboratively, is a more noble pursuit. And I've worked with and for, done different things for this old family enterprise for 17 years. And
so I'm familiar with some of the spirits. I do want to touch on that Panamanian rum.
Sure, yeah.
So give me it's a big collection of stuff from what I understand, but there is some brilliant spirits in that portfolio that I imagine either you had some direct hand in, or it's something that you're very passionate about. So let's just say, like, what are the three that are really on your mind?
I guess that's probably the most honest analysis of my relationship with Haas Brothers over the years has been, it's provided a bigger sandbox for me to play in.
Yeah.
And when I look at what we can do in agave spirits as being a means towards an end, not an end in and of themselves, I've thought of what are vehicles that can understand our mission and further our mission.
Yeah.
The family at Haas Brothers is exactly that. And they've afforded me really the liberty to do whatever I really want. And over the years, I've become intrigued, as one does, with different projects. There's one commonality, I think, with everyone in this spirits and bartender and restaurateur and hospitality sector, which is
we're all failed musicians.
Yeah, failed musicians, failed actors. No, lots of irons and lots of fires.
Yeah.
And it's been a really an enabling device for me to fulfill a lot of ambitions that I've had. Continue. Got lots of projects.
Yeah.
And we can't, all rebuild Rome here. There's no need. If you can find someone that understands your ambition in life, your goal, and is willing to let you pursue that unencumbered and unhindered.
So there's no end in sight for your abilities and your leeway and your flexibility with.
As we say in Spanish, el día que el Señor me lleva.
So tell me
the day the Lord takes me is the end.
Yeah.
We don't know when that's going to be.
Well, we can finish the rest of this Don Amato bottle. And we'll still
I don't think that'll do it.
I don't think,
you may go blind. I don't think it's going to end.
That'll even do it. That won't even do it. Well, man.
Well, you asked about Panama.
Yeah, there's that. I tried one with John. That was, I think, a 9-year or 10-year.
A 9-year?
Mm-hmm. 9-year, which is just exceptional.
Oh,
I hear
thank
there's
you.
a 23-year as well.
That's right.
Which I've got to get a bottle of.
Thank you.
It's nice, tight, and dry.
Thank you. I got to say that whole endeavor has been much more selfish than altruistic.
You just wanted to have a nice rum selection for yourself.
Exactly. We do find ourselves in Mexico. There's a misnomer in the United States. People think that Mexico is predominantly a tequila drinking country. It's
not at all. It's
the
brandy,
number one
right?
spirit is rum. The number 2 spirit is brandy.
Yeah.
I think now the number 3 is a kind of a low end tequila.
Yeah.
What we say a mixto. That's a gold, aguardiente of caña mixed with agave.
Right.
And frankly, I grew tired of being in circles with friends drinking vanilla, additive laden, concoctions of candy rums. Yeah. And I actually have always been partial to the flavor of rum. I like rum. Yeah. And as I've done a couple of other times in my life, I just couldn't find what I wanted. So I began to a pursuit of trying to create it. And I wanted something that was congener rich, dirty, sulfury a little bit.
But punchy and dry.
Punchy.
Tight, very tight.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say dry. I usually do like dry spirits, but in fact, what I wanted was a little bit more gratifying experience, but with some depth.
Yeah.
And something, some contemplation. And I found that in a distiller that spent 30 years of his life distilling in Santiago de Cuba for Havana Club.
Wow.
And emigrated first to the Dominican Republic and began asking for part of his wages in rum. Mm. And then needed a secure warehouse. And so he started storing rums in Panama, and then later went to work for a Central American conglomerate in the cane fields.
What's the brand called?
I named it Panama Pacific because I'm born and raised in San Francisco and Bay Area, and there's a tremendous event in our local history. Of course, people have heard of the 1906 earthquake.
Sure.
Devastating to our economy and to our society, but actually kind of a catalyst for an entrepreneurial can-do spirit that was a continuation out of the gold rush era, and a conviction that we can remake ourselves. We can be who we want to be. A lot of people move to California, change their names famously in Hollywood and that whole thing, and kind of reinvent yourself. And San Francisco, in the period from 1906 through the construction, coincidentally, of the Panama Canal, which finished in late 1914, was about rebuilding this majestic city of the West. It's intriguing or interesting to note that the industrialists of the era spent $400 million and $1915
Jesus Christ.
to put on this grand world exposition called the Panama Pacific Exposition.
Really?
Of 1915. And that was, we tend to forget now in the modern era.
Well, I don't know that we ever remembered if it was.
No, but I'd say what it meant for mankind.
Right.
To link the Atlantic and the Pacific. And to create that passageway through Panama, what that meant in connectivity and enterprise, commerce, but community and exploration and bringing distant neighbors closer. And the whole progressive era was just, I think, magnificent. Post-industrialization, before the cynicism that came with World War I, and kind of a stark, abrupt awakening of global realities. But when you're a history guy, aren't you? I like history, as you can tell.
As you look, you gotta look at your nails like,
yeah, I like history. I like history. So it was a no-brainer to name this rum that we launched in this last year, 2015, to mark the centennial of the Panama Pacific International Centennial.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. So much more insight to it than I think anybody knows.
Or anyone would care.
I don't know. I won't make any call.
Personal.
How is that?
What we do is personal. So this is personal to our story.
Totally right. But how's that 23 year?
Oh, it's exquisite.
God damn. It's exquisite. I'm making sure that John.
As we say in Spanish, no hay pandero que habla mal de su pan. There's no baker that speaks ill of his bread.
I imagine it's unparalleled.
Yes, absolutely.
He wasn't even paid to say that.
No, they're fun. Another project over the last couple of years I got really intrigued with was, again, historically rooted. There was Mexico won its independence from Spain in the early 1800s, and the first third of the 1800s, I think it was 1834. And that whole bandido era that we see on black and white, cowboy movies when we're kids, of the massive mule trains and the bandidos and crazy 19th century Mexico.
Right.
Mexico was once again vulnerable to foreign forces. A lot of Americans don't know that the United States has actually militarily invaded Mexico 7 times in Mexico's history.
As if we couldn't get the message.
But this time, it touched to le tocaba a los franceses, and the French invaded in 1882, I believe it was, and imposed a Austrian-born dictator named Maximilian, his wife Charlotte, so Maximiliano y Carlota.
Really?
They were in Mexico for 20 years, but his reign only lasted something like 4 years. But what's interesting about the Mexican communitarian sentiment is they actually didn't persecute all of the French emigres that had moved from Europe to France. They just said at that point, hey, but you got to get in where you can fit in. Right. The 50,000 or so Frenchmen that had moved to Mexico joined Mexican regular society. They lost their royalty status. But among them was this gentleman, Henri Vallée, who brought to Mexico formulas for distilling Fernet. Note, I don't say Fernet. It's not Fernetto or Fernetti. It's not an Italian word. It's a French word. Yeah. Fernet.
No shit.
As much as the Italians would like to deny that. And brought a couple of other recipes. A bitter made from the bark of the Angostura tree. Uh-huh. And somehow those recipes endured 130 years, totally neglected. The brands were always for sale in Mexico, but absolutely not popular. Kind of the cobwebbed old dusty bottle at the top shelf of a bar in the far corner. But I was very intrigued with them and began importing those products.
Yeah, I've had it. It's wonderful stuff.
And then several years later, had the opportunity to actually buy those brands.
Really?
And
so do you own those brands?
I own those brands.
How many brands do you own now? And the kids count, so you could count the kids. You own them.
Well, I don't own that. I own maybe 4 brands, but I do partnerships with people.
Yeah.
And I have a sense of proprietorship over things that I don't own, which is probably a fool's mission. But I've had great partners, and I've had opportunity to do some extraordinary things. So really, at the end of the day, does the boss work for the workers, or do the workers work for the boss?
Right.
Ownership is incidental. None of these are like lucrative ventures.
Sure.
They're
we
all,
do because you love it. If you didn't,
I do really love it, and we have,
Well, so
ulterior purposes. And really, what we say in this business, at some point, we all have the epiphany. The people we get to work with,
that's it, man,
are the reason to wake up in the morning and to live the day.
And I mean, it's an amazing note, Enrique. It's great. Like, you guys are here. I got to get a picture because this is like a really wonderful experience for me. Jake, you coming in from California. If ever I can learn just a little bit from you guys, that is an amazing thing. But to think like we all wake up in the morning and we're all peers, this is the best fucking team there is.
Yeah.
Right?
It's dynamic. It's very empowering.
It is. And it you never can be too down about it because we can always count on each other and we can always ask questions. It's been an amazing run here, but really great getting to know you. And
thanks,
I'm
Mike.
in San Francisco, man.
Thanks for this opportunity.
It's my pleasure. And Enrique, thank you for so much for sitting in, and wonderful mezcal and wonderful conversation, Jake.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks so much. We'll talk soon, man. Thank you.
Be well. Thanks, brother.
Well, there we have it. What do you guys think of Jake? Now, Jake may seem serious. He's obviously just an amazingly intelligent with regard to the world, and specifically mezcal, tequila, and agave spirits. But don't let that fool you. He is incredibly intelligent, but what may seem like a kind of pensive seriousness, he is very, very funny, hilarious, down-to-earth, compassionate, and warm. One might call him a sweetheart. So just a little insight after we concluded the interview that wonderful weekday evening. Enrique, Jake, and I were seeking out some food post-midnight on a weekday, and luckily Whataburger was right around the corner. So one of the fondest and great memories I've had with any of the guests is the three of us going to get some breakfast taquitos at Whataburger, talking tequila, talking people, and just walking around the neighborhood. It was a great night. Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Enrique. So thank you, everybody, for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter what taquito combination is your favorite on the Whataburger late night menu, or what kind of bass tracks you want to lay down next, please keep dancing.